I really want to give him a hug. Is there a way for me to travel back in time just to give this man a hug?
Welcome to Electric Enthusiasm, the podcast where we celebrate unironic enthusiasm.
I'm your resident wannabe jazz historian, Katie Cobalt.
Which makes me really excited for this episode. And I'm Alexander Kjellf, and I have a massive cold. That's why my voice sounds like really sexy today. Katie, how does this work?
In each episode, one of us presents a topic that they are hyped about, but the other topic thinks that they know nothing. But the other host thinks they know nothing about. But you do know about this man. And then the first host tries their best to spread that enthusiasm to the other host and get you, the listeners, hyped as well. Sometimes we have guests on who are super excited about something we know nearly nothing about.
Can I say I'm just a little scared today because you're always hyped about these topics, but you sound extra hyped today.
I love Billy Strayhorn. I'm sorry, I love him so much.
That's amazing. We also have the moment of meta where we get to nerd out about enthusiasm and talk about why it matters and how you can live a more enthusiastic life.
We think the world needs more enthusiasm, and you can share yours on our website at electricenthusiasm.com or on our Instagram at electricenthusiasm. And tell us what you're excited about these days. Or tell us what Billy Strayhorn songs that you know about. No, sorry, I'm getting excited. Too soon, Katie. Or you can send us an email at hello@electricenthusiasm.com. Y'all, I'm so hyped I put on a blazer today. I am like dressed up for today's podcast. The YouTube channel knows about it. The podcast listeners do not know. I look cute today.
You're looking very dapper.
Thanks. Okay, as I've already mentioned, because your girl is hyped, we're going to talk about Billy Strayhorn today.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who that is at all?
When you mentioned to me last week that the topic was going to be Billy Strayhorn, I didn't. I had no clue. But then the weirdest thing happened.
Yes.
Do you know how somebody will introduce a topic to you and suddenly you see it everywhere?
Yes.
So you mentioned Billy Strayhorn. I was like, who, what, where? No clue. Sounds interesting. Let's go. The very next day, one of the swing dance associations in Copenhagen announced an event where they're going to talk about the music of Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn. Yes. And then Friday night, we were in Odense, another Danish city, for a big swing dance Christmas party. There's a big band. And they announced the next song is going to be Duke Ellington's Take the A Train, as arranged by Billy Strayhorn. So I went from knowing nothing to knowing nearly nothing. So this dude must have been in music, swing music specifically, and arranged songs and worked with Duke Ellington. And besides that, I have no clue who, what, where, how, why, anything. Tell me all about it.
That's amazing. Okay, so firstly, that's why I said you definitely have heard of Billy Strayhorn's work, because I know you're a swing dancer and for sure you've heard his music before. Secondly, the phenomenon where when you first learn of something, all of a sudden it's everywhere, is called the Baader-Meinhoff phenomenon, or the frequency illusion. When you've heard about it or learned about something recently, it's at the forefront of your mind and then you see it everywhere. Because I bet there were loads of musicians and people talking about Billy Strayhorn in your vicinity before, but because you recently learned that it was important, that's why you're hearing it everywhere. And it is a really cool phenomenon. By the way, we had our moment of Google already.
That's fantastic. And they named it the Baader-Meinhoff phenomenon after the German left-wing terror group in the 70s.
Sure. I didn't know that was what that was.
Yeah, abducted and killed people.
Lovely. Fabulous.
Yeah,
I
that's so good.
We could look more into that another day, because today I would like to take us a tour through Billy Strayhorn's life and legacy through his music. So for each segment of today's podcast, we will have a song to listen to.
Should we start with the facts first?
Facts first. Mr. Billy Strayhorn was born in November 29th, 1915. He was a musical prodigy. He started playing piano in school and had aspirations of being a classical musical composer. However, he was a young black man in the early 1900s. So not ideal. He actually would start playing his own compositions in music class, and his teachers thought they were classical compositions. They did not realize that he had written that music himself. By 16, he had written his own full-length musical called Fantastic Rhythm, because he's bomb. It actually ended up being a production that's put on show in his hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So by
Wow.
16, he was already producing musicals, writing stuff. He loved both classical compositions, like the European aesthetic, but he also had a love of pop music. And remember,
Mhm.
we're in the 1920s, so pop music means jazz.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that we need to know about Strayhorn is that he was a prodigy. He was phenomenal. He started young. And
Wow.
he kind of didn't really go anywhere with it. He wanted to be a musician, but didn't really know what to do about it. He loved music, he was writing music, and he was producing small stuff, but he was mostly working as delivery boy.
Okay. Yeah.
And so in 1938, Strayhorn was the tender age of 23. He
Mhm.
goes to a Duke Ellington show. The Duke at this point is
Mhm.
39 years old. So there's like a significant age gap. One of Strayhorn's school friends, George Greenlee Jr., had an uncle called Gus Greenlee. Now, Gus Greenlee was like a bigwig. He knew everybody in the music business. And his school friend, George, was like, you know what I should do? I should introduce my friend Billy Strayhorn, who is one of the finest musicians I've ever known, to Gus. Gus can then
Mhm.
introduce him to all the musical bigwigs.
Good plan.
At a party, George, in front of Gus, told Ellington about his friend, knowing that in front of his uncle, Ellington wasn't going to say, fuck off, I don't care, right? Like, in order for this meeting of Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn, there was some serious scheming going on, right? Planning
Mhm.
how to bring up Billy, when to do it, where to do it. And so eventually, what happens at this party is that Ellington tells George and Gus to bring Billy Strayhorn backstage after the show.
Mhm.
So this is a performance that they were doing in Pittsburgh. And they arrive after the matinee. Duke is fully having a nap on the sofa backstage. He is not really like mentally ready for what's about to happen. But Billy Strayhorn walks in with his friend and his friend's uncle. They wake up Duke. Duke is a little bit like, oh, come on, what the hell? Like some dumb kid is here. And Billy turns to Mr. Ellington and goes, Mr. Ellington, this is how you played this number in the show. And on the piano started playing a note for note imitation of Sophisticated Lady, one of Duke's hits at the time. And then Billy goes,
Whoa.
and here is how I would play it. And he played it again, an up-tempo version in a different key that was just fire. As George Greenlee said, it was pretty hip sounding. Duke immediately sits up and is like, whoa, what is happening? And then runs to grab another musician in the band, Harry Carney, brings him in, is like, you gotta hear this kid play. And soon other band members are pouring in, including the famous Johnny Hodges and their vocalist Evie Anderson, and everyone is like, yo, who is this kid? What is he doing? This is insane.
Wow.
He just keeps playing music. He plays his own compositions. He rearranges some of Duke's stuff. Like I said, he rearranged Sophisticated Lady. Ellington told Strayhorn, you need to come to New York. You need to come work for me. Here's $20 for the orchestration, like the rearrangement you just did to Sophisticated Lady. And here's a piece of paper explaining how to get to my house from Penn Station to my apartment in Harlem, right?
Mhm.
Now, poor Billy Strayhorn. He's 23. He kind of wants to do this, but he's also like, this guy's got to be kidding. This guy can't be real. Are you kidding me? He didn't really want to leave Pittsburgh. His mom was not super healthy. He has his life there. But his mom's basically like, go, you have to go do this. Come on. And he had a friend who was also a musician who was white who offered to help
Mhm.
him pay for the cost of the trip. Because another thing is,
Right.
getting to New York from Pittsburgh, you got $20 from Duke. That is not enough to cover the train fare. So his white
Mm.
friend offered to travel with him and cover the costs of the trip. They set off for New York. And he didn't want to show up empty handed. So he started writing a number whilst on the train based off the directions that Ellington gave him. But he didn't finish the tune. This is not this moment. He started
Okay.
writing it, but he never finished it. Yeah.
Yeah. A question though. So he
Yes.
played the piano.
He played the piano. Yes.
Yeah. I think the only thing that could have made the story better is if he played the trumpet with a name like Strayhorn.
I know, right? It's such a
Come
shame.
on. Come on. Alrighty. Duke Ellington and his orchestra. Flamingo.
Flamingo, like a flame in the sky, flying over the island to my lover nearby. Flamingo, with your tropical hue, for it's you I rely on, and a love that is true. The wind sings his song.
So this song came out in 1941 and features a vocalist called Herb Jeffries. This is actually their first big hit. They wrote this song together.
Wow.
You will notice that it is written and credited to Duke Ellington and his orchestra, and you'll notice Billy Strayhorn's name is nowhere to be seen. And this is actually true for the majority of their over 3 decades of working together. Duke takes the spotlight, Duke takes the credit, Billy did most of the work.
Huh.
What happened in their relationship is that Billy Strayhorn moved to New York, moved in with Duke's family, and Duke looked after him. He wanted for nothing. He was cared for. He was loved. He was given a safe home. Duke was possibly a father figure to him. And in exchange, Billy wrote the music. He did what he loved. He created music. But he wasn't on
Hmm.
payroll and he wasn't credited. And this is a pattern we're going to see throughout their career. But this was their first big hit. It charted on the Billboard as number 13 in 1941. It also not just launched their partnership together, but also helped Herb Jeffries, the vocalist, develop his own stardom. I have a quote for you by Mr. Herb Jeffries.
Most people came to this planet by stork. I came by flamingo. And Strayhorn was the attending physician. That is quite the image, being dropped down the chimney by a flamingo instead of a stork.
Yeah.
I love it.
This is the beginning of their incredibly productive partnership, where you can start to see all of these wonderful songs coming together. Billy Strayhorn was also a gay young man. One of the reasons why he wasn't in the forefront for a lot of these things is that it's not a super great time to be gay in America. I mean, arguably it's still not the best time to be gay. I mean, it's the best time to be gay in America, but it's still not great. Even within Duke Ellington's band, there was homophobia abundant. Duke's
Huh.
publicist also was homophobic. Juan Tizol was the band's trombonist and transcriber. He would transcribe and write out all the charts. However,
Hmm.
Tizol refused to write the charts from Billy Strayhorn. So Strayhorn would have
What
to
the?
handwrite the charts himself for the rest of the band so that everyone had a copy of it because Tizol refused to do it.
Was he afraid that his music was gay, or what the fuck? What's going
No,
on
no, he
here?
played it as well. Interestingly, Tizol was also a composer for the band. His best-known compositions you've probably heard of are Caravan from 1936
Yeah.
and Perdido
Yeah.
from 1941.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So even within his working life, his musicianship life, there was still a lot of homophobia. And it's one of the reasons I think why he didn't take to the spotlight and he didn't fight to have his credit, just because it's
Right.
already so hard to be a black man at this time. To be a black gay man is just adding another level of intersectional oppression upon
Yeah.
himself.
If this had been a white band leader taking the credit for a black composer's work, that would have been just another Tuesday. They did that all the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
But was that a thing with the black band leaders as well, towards other black composers?
I do not know 100% for sure. Billy and Duke had a really special relationship. They had a really strong bond. We're going to talk a lot more about their complicated relationship. Duke was an empowering person. He gave the stage and the space for Billy to create his music. And not just Billy, but also the other musicians in his bands. Like, people in his band wrote music, they performed, they were celebrated. Paul Gonsalves, for example, have a lot of amazing, iconic solos because of Duke Ellington's band and Duke Ellington's leadership. However,
Hmm.
Duke was also very controlling and quite
Hmm.
possessive. He's giving this platform to these amazing young artists, but also he has a lot of control over what they do and how they think and how they perform. And for example,
Right.
later in his career, Strayhorn does try and collaborate with other people, including Frank Sinatra, and those don't tend to work out very well because Duke didn't have a hand in them. But Strayhorn's life wasn't always so sad. He has a very famous number called Lush Life, which he started writing in 1933 and did not finish writing until 1936. It was first performed live with the vocalist Kay Davis by Duke Ellington Orchestra in 1948. But I'm going to send you a link. Link number 2 is
Yeah.
actually performed in 1964, so a little bit later, in which you can hear Strayhorn singing his song.
Ooh, he sang too.
Not as good as Kay Davis, but he did sing.
I used to visit all the very gay places, come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew had sad and sullen gray faces with distingué traces that used to be there. You could see where they'd been washed away by too many through the day. 12 o'clock tales. Then you came.
What a great voice. What a great voice. Like, very jazzy. I just love that there's a lot of emotion in that voice. I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Also, it starts with, I used to go to all the gay places. And I know that was before gay meant queer, but still.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I would like to take a moment now to talk about his first love, Mr. Aaron Bridgers. They met in 1939. They were actually introduced by Mr. Ellington. They met, and then within 2 weeks were completely inseparable. They had the same favorite musicians. They loved the same thing. Teddy Wilson and Tatum were their absolute favorites. They'd go to their concerts together. They loved French classical composers. They were both fluent in French as well. And they delighted in how it would confuse everybody when they would sit on the subway together, 2 black men together, speaking French. And everyone was just completely befuddled by it. They eventually got their own house together, a brownstone basement apartment. They had a bar built in there. They had a piano. They even had an amateur record cutting machine to be able to make recordings of their music and their singing, because they're both musicians.
Mhm.
Very amusingly, they moved in downstairs from another jazz vocalist, Jimmy Rushing, and his wife, Connie. This is a quote from Mr. Aaron Bridges, Billy Strayhorn's first love, about living underneath Jimmy Rushing and his wife.
They were always fighting and made all kinds of noise, screaming and hollering and throwing things all day. And when they made up at night, they were even noisier. Neighbors from hell.
Oh, definitely. In response, Billy and Bridgers had a beautiful apartment. It was gorgeously decorated like something out of a magazine. Everything had its place. He would
Mhm.
cook meals together. Being a gay man in the 1940s, you could go out to bars. Like, there was a bar that they would frequent called the Social Club. However, they would
Mhm.
much prefer to have private gatherings where Billy
Right.
would cook all day, making home-style food like fried chicken and collard greens. Oh, he was also very famous for his beans. He would make beans and serve it with beer. That was a very like typical thing you'd have when you go to their house for a party. And Aaron would be behind the bar, acting as bartender, serving their guests. There would be pianos playing. If someone sat down on the piano, Billy would sit next to them and start playing alongside them. And they would, as a group of people, just start composing music just because they could. No one would record it, and everyone would forget it happened the next morning. But that
Yeah.
was the thing that was quite magical about these things. It was very ephemeral, and Billy could make magic out of absolutely nothing, which was beautiful.
Wow.
I have a slightly longer quote for you. This is from Ralph Burns, who was a fellow jazz pianist who attended these evening private gatherings.
Billy loved to play host and make sure everybody was eating. That's the kind of party he liked to have. It would be great because a lot of us had so much in common. A lot of us were in the music business and we were gay, of course. Not that we would stand there and talk about being gay, that wasn't it. It was just really good to be in each other's company. Billy would put these parties together and they were just a great, easy, natural, good time. Wow. Imagine being able to create that mood, that atmosphere, that setting where people can just go and be themselves, feel safe, not have to pretend, and just have a good time. That's amazing.
Yeah. And also the importance of making sure everyone was eating. This is my kind of party host. I really appreciate this
Yes.
about Billy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I just love this idea that in his career, in his work life, he was kind of being shunned to the side. He was kind of not getting his credit. Even his
Mhm.
bandmates weren't treating him very respectfully. But
Yeah.
in his home life with Aaron Bridgers, he was able to create this wonderful community, this wonderful space where he's able to be himself and cook a lot. There's also lots of quotes from Bridgers talking about Billy's cooking. That was like a thing that he really loved to do.
Ah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you're telling me he could compose, he could sing, he could play the piano, he could cook, he could create this welcoming, loving atmosphere. Do you ever get the sense that some people are just too talented and they need to chill a little bit?
I think the thing that I love about him is he's very understated. He's such a behind the scenes kind of guy. Like the lack of credit was both deeply frustrating because his talent wasn't being recognized, but also kind of a relief. He didn't have to be on the spotlight. He could have his private life, he could
Sure.
have his privacy. But now it's 1940. The American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, the ASCAP, raised its licensing fees for broadcast use. So, this means that many ASAP members, including ASCAP, many ASCAP members, including Ellington,
Are we sure that's the the the
that's
the, the
definitely
official
not how it
pronunciation?
is. No,
ASCAP,
definitely
the
no.
ASCAP, American
Um,
Association of Composers and Producers. Is
auth-
that or
the American Society of Composers, Authors, and
ah,
Publishers,
ASCAP?
ASCAP. So many of the ASCAP members, including Ellington, could no longer play their compositions over radio. This is a huge financial hit because if you can't play on the radio, you don't get record sales. The radio producers aren't paying you either. And so any music that is under the Association of Duke Ellington before 1940, you now have to pay more money to be able to have it played, which unfortunately means that Ellington is kind of fucked. So,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to also introduce you to his son, Mercer Ellington. Mercer is kind of like the opposite of Strayhorn, where Strayhorn didn't have a lot of formalized education. Mercer actually went to proper music college and was able to develop his musical schools within an institution and always wanted a musicianship that his father could be proud of. So he also joined the team as the writing staff behind Ellington's music. And there was a little bit of rivalry between Mercer and Strayhorn. You have the true
Mm-hmm.
born son and you have like the
Uh-huh.
adopted son kind of energy. There was a little bit of that kind of rivalry, but at the end of the day, they had to work together. So after the ASAP raised their licensing fees, Ellington basically got
Oh,
the two
sorry,
guys
sorry.
together.
The
ASCAP,
ASCAP.
yeah. After ASCAP raised their licensing fees, Ellington made a really bold decision. They scrapped the band book. Basically, anything the band had already played that was associated with the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, they just scrapped it. They
Mhm.
chucked it. They were like, cool, we're done with that. If we play it, we don't get radio play. We can't afford that. So all of that gets chucked out. We need to write an
Whoa.
entirely new set, an entirely new band book.
Whoa.
And we have 16 hours. So on the train from they were in Pittsburgh at the time to Los Angeles where they were playing their gig next, they had to write a lot of music. So the three of them got together. They didn't have a piano and they wrote like crazy. And it was during this train ride that Mercer found a discarded draft of a song in the trash can. And he looked at it and he was like, this is amazing. And Strayhorn's like, no, no, don't look at that, don't look at that. It's like it sounds too like Fletcher Henderson-y. It's like I don't want it to sound like that. It's not. But Mercer insisted. Mercer was like, this is an amazing tune. We have to play this. And
Mhm.
so I would like you now to click link number 3 to hear what song that almost got scrapped.
Billy Billy Strayhorn is our encore.
No way.
Take the A train. And in this video, you can see Billy Strayhorn take to the piano, and you can see how he's very cute. He's like a small man, very owly glasses, very sweet man.
Wow. And that was based on the directions that the Duke gave to Billy on how to get to his place in New York, right?
Yes, it is. So it's
Take the A
based
train.
of those notes from 1938. So Strayhorn kept that idea in his mind, but just never truly developed the song because he was quite worried about it sounding very Fletcher Henderson-y. And so that's why he kind of just left it on the cutting room floor. And then in that train ride, he was like, okay, well, let's try like rework this. I kind of got this idea. Still didn't like it. And Mercer was like, dude, what are you doing? This is amazing. And so we need to thank Mercer Ellington for giving the encouragement to Strayhorn to finish that song. And it became one of Duke Ellington's most iconic songs, the song that everyone wanted to hear when they went to an Ellington show.
That song is amazing. It is one of my absolute favorite swing songs.
Mm-hmm. And it's a massive hit,
Mm-hmm.
and Ellington took the credit. So Strayhorn soared none of the royalties. And even after Take the A Train, Strayhorn was still not on Duke Ellington's payroll.
Huh.
So
Huh.
I'm so angry on behalf of Strayhorn at this point. I'm just like, yo, like, what does this kid have to
Yeah.
do to prove to you he is worthy of paying? But Duke provided for him and like gave him this outlet of creativity, and also like he wanted for nothing while Duke was there. But I'm
Yeah.
still mad. I'm still mad.
I can see that. I'm mad with you. Do we know how Billy felt about it?
Billy was a very private man. I found interviews with people around him, but not with him
Yeah.
personally. He was very grateful that Duke gave him the space that he did. Last week we talked about why not both.
Mm-hmm.
It's why not both. Being
Yeah.
deeply frustrated and very sad and very squashed down, but also being able to create the stuff he wanted to create and have access to these musicians and be able to do what he really truly was fantastic at. Why not
Yeah.
both? I will say
Yeah.
he did start at this time. He's already very, very much heavily drinking and smoking. Later on, he develops a really strong relationship with Lena Horne, the vocalist.
Mhm.
And Lena Horne's daughter has said that she saw Billy Strayhorn having a cigarette and a beer for breakfast.
Good morning.
Yeah. So he is a very heavy smoker. He's a very heavy drinker. In his home with Aaron Burgers, it's said that there's always at least 2 chilled martini glasses in the fridge at any given time so that he can make a martini at any notice.
Right.
So he's a very,
Right.
very, very heavy drinker and smoker at this point.
Sucks.
Yeah. But we're going to move on to their first musical together. In 1941, they write a musical called A Jump for Joy, and it was really ahead of its time. It was parodying racial stereotypes in a way that was never done by African American artists. A lot of the music had racial overtones to it. They were taking the piss of white people and the way that Black people were being treated in America. Duke Ellington would later describe this show as the first social significance show. They were very, very much ahead of their time. And it featured
Wow.
the fantastic vocalist Evie Anderson. Strayhorn was credited on this particular musical only as the co-arranger, despite the fact that he wrote all the music with Duke Ellington.
Right.
So this is one of those ones where having a African-American composer writing music talking about race in 1941 was already insane. Duke Ellington was getting death threats for this.
Yeah.
So this is one of those times where, for me, I'm seeing this as like Duke is protecting Strayhorn because they knew that what they were doing was super radical. They knew what they're doing was not going to be taken very well. It had over 122 performances and never made it to Broadway. It was seen as one of those shows that completely revolutionized what you could say with music, and yet it was never a commercial success. So you can have a listen to the first track of the musical, Jump for Joy.
I don't think I've ever heard this. This is fantastic.
I believe there's other songs in the musical you may have heard of. I think Johnny Come Lately is also from this musical. I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but there is, if you understand musicians speak, I barely understood the video, but I really enjoyed his talking. There's a musician who breaks down what makes Billy Strayhorn's compositions particularly unique to him and the way he builds his music. I will make sure that is in the show notes. I will admit, I don't speak musician. And I have a very rough understanding of musician. I like music to dance to. So
Yeah.
I like the stuff and I like knowing about the people, but the
Yeah.
chords and the way the arrangement is done is new information for me and not stuff I fully understand.
I'm with you 100% of the way. One story about race in swing
Yes.
music at the time. One of the two big bands, either Duke Ellington or Count Basie, I forget which one, were getting set to tour the US. This band had a few black musicians who could pass as white,
Mhm.
and they had to let those musicians stay home and find more obviously black musicians in case some people might think that their band was
Segregate.
desegregated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
That
yeah. Oh, sorry.
sucks.
Yeah, I know you're black, but you look too white. You're gonna have to stay home. We'll find a blacker musician to take your place because we don't want people to think that black and white people can actually play jazz music together.
That
Sucks.
sucks.
That's what we have to do.
I will say the Billy Strayhorn's private gatherings in his apartment with Aaron Bridgers were desegregated. They were mixed, and everyone could attend and play music together.
There you go. There you go.
And actually, towards later in his life, he ended up dating a white man, so not
Oh, cool.
part of Billy Strayhorn's world. I'm skipping ahead to the end of 1941. Ellington had set up a meeting between Miss Lena Horne and Billy Strayhorn. He sent Lena tickets to the opening show in Los Angeles and told her, "You're going to meet Sweet Pea." And these two Pittsburgh natives had never met before. Despite the fact they grew up both in the same neighborhood of Pittsburgh, they never crossed paths, but they had a lot of connections. Like his piano teacher ended up being her vocal coach and like lots of little things like this. Like she knew Uncle Gus. Miss Lena Horne attends the show. She's sitting down. She notices this chair next to her is empty. And during intermission, a small man joins her, sits down, and she says he looks very sweet and like an elegant owl. And he goes, "I'm Billy Strayhorn, Sweet Pea." His soft voice and warm manner immediately put her at ease. After the show, she invited him to her apartment. They talked through the night, and they completely fell in love. The love that they
Wow.
shared was not romantic or sexual. She even suspected that Duke had sent him as a chaperone to keep other men away because Duke knew that Billy was gay. But Lena knew immediately that her and Billy Strayhorn were destined to be soulmates. They worked very closely together, coming up with compositions and creating music together all the way until his passing. And they often talk very, very, very fondly of each other. She talks about him being her brother and their relationship being pure because it wasn't entangled with romance or with sex. Incidentally, the reason why Duke sent Strayhorn is because Duke and Lena Horne had a thing back in the day. And so Duke didn't want anyone else. Like I said, Duke was a little controlling. Duke was a little
Yeah,
possessive.
yeah.
Evidence. It's not just me making this up. He sent the gay kid to go like chaperone Lena Horne so no one else will go near her.
Yeah.
Rude.
Yeah.
But you can click on link number 5. And this is a little bit later, this recording. This is from 1965. And I thought I'd give you a Christmas song because, it's getting close to Christmas now.
'Tis the season.
Exactly. This piece was recorded at the first of 2 concert performances of Duke Ellington in the Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in New York City. So this was recorded on December 26, 1965. And you can hear Duke Ellington introduces them, calls Billy Strayhorn on stage, and refers to Lena Horne as his pretty little friend.
His pretty little friend.
And now it is my pleasure to introduce my writing and arranging companion, a major contributor to any performance that we make. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Strayhorn and his pretty little friend.
Joseph, son of David,
Is that a Strayhorn composition or?
Yep.
Wow.
It's really, I find a lot of his music is very romantic. You can hear the
Yes.
influence of like his classical background and his love of all things French.
Yes, that was a lovely song.
I love the song. It's very sweet. They were very good friends all the way through their lives. And during the civil rights movement, it was actually Billy Strayhorn who was very active in it and got Lena Horne to become more active in it as well, and to get her to use her celebrity for a really good cause. They would perform together for the NAACP. They attended the March on Washington together, and Billy Strayhorn was always by her side, helped her write her speeches, helped her write her remarks. It's because of him that she was involved at all. And so we thank Billy Strayhorn for helping radicalize more people to the cause. I feel like in this episode, I'm giving you some wonderful stuff about his relationships in his life, and then immediately destroying that lovely feeling by talking about how he was not credited for something.
Yeah.
So in 1959, Duke and Strayhorn get the chance of a lifetime to compose a score for the film Anatomy of a Murder. Now, this film score was considered to be, it's very unusual to ask Black people to cover music, and it was with the fabulous director Otto Preminger. I don't really know him, and I don't really know the movie. Can you tell? But he was like the Hollywood darling of the time. To have his people reach out to Duke and bring Billy and him over to Hollywood was a massive deal. So they were hired to compose a score. They were put up in a penthouse apartment together. Duke said that the balcony, the patio for this apartment, was bigger than the apartment itself. And he would spend his day sitting in the sunshine, looking at the gorgeous view, saying, "Oh, I recognize that building. Oh, look at that mountain. Oh, look how beautiful it is." And then someone would call him up and be like, Duke, the recording is happening in 2 days. Like, where are you, Dan?" And he just kind of
and then
rocked
and
up.
then and then Duke Ellington went, "Yeah, well, we once made an entire concert in 16 hours on the train to LA, so we've got this."
Well, Billy was the one working on the friggin' thing. And he would just show
Exactly.
up. And they were both hired together. And they worked together, and they were promised that they would both be credited on the movie. And then guess what happened? Nobody is surprised.
Oh,
Only Duke is
man.
credited in the movie. Duke even actually gets a little cameo in the film. You can actually see him in the movie sitting at the bar. But our boy, our beloved Mr. Billy Strayhorn, was not credited on the score, which went on
Wow.
to win 3 Grammys. Best Performance by a
Wow.
Dance Band, Best Musical Composition for first recorded and released in 1959, and Best Soundtrack Album. So Ellington has those 3 Grammys to his name, which I would like to say are also Billy Strayhorn's. They are
Yeah.
shared.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a really little asterisk.
yep.
Yeah.
Massive
Duke
asterisks.
Ellington, asterisk, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
the first significant Hollywood film to have it scored by African Americans and not diegetically. So, do you know what I mean by diegetic and non-diegetic music?
Yeah, where it's part of the film occurring in the scene or just played
Yes.
over the scene. Yeah.
Exactly. So this was like the first significant Hollywood film to have an African American composer for the non-diegetic music. So the stuff that's like just magically happening.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, because
Um,
it was very common to have like a ballroom scene and a band playing and people dancing.
exactly.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, which is very cool. This is one of those times where, again, if Duke had said something, if Duke had pushed, for sure they could have got credit for Billy Strayhorn. This quote here is from Gail Lamette Buckley, who is Lena Horne's daughter, who knew Billy Strayhorn throughout her whole life. And I think she has a really good insight into Duke and Billy's relationship.
hmm That's how you become Duke Ellington. Duke was very focused. Billy was more diffused. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. Duke had that drive for stardom, and he
Yeah.
was also so charismatic. Billy was softer, he was sweeter, he was quieter. Lena Horne said that Duke was the brains of the operation, but Billy was the heart. And I think another reason for his like diffused personality was the fact that he was gay. So he was juggling this identity with the concept of being quote unquote famous. He was as
hmm
open as one could be about being gay in the 1940s, but that was a really big part of his identity and who he was as a person.
And probably a huge driver of their success together is that they were so different. The two Billy Strayhorns together would not have had the drive that Duke Ellington did. Two Duke Ellingtons together would have fallen apart very quickly
Yeah, for sure.
because each of them would have wanted the spotlight, but one of each turns out to be a really good match, right?
Yeah.
And if only if only Duke Ellington had been a little more willing to share the credits, I would have yeah. But still, it worked, and it gave the
It did
world a
work.
lot of really amazing music.
Phenomenal music.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
I'm gonna bring the energy back up again because
Yes.
I'm gonna talk about the first time Billy Strayhorn was credited as a co-writer,
Hmm?
and his picture was on the cover of the album,
Oh
which is
yeah.
obviously deeply important to me. Pop a picture of it's not a very good-looking album, IMO, but Billy Strayhorn had this idea to do Tchaikovsky Nutcracker but jazz. You can see
Ooh.
the album cover there. Billy Strayhorn sitting right next to Mr. Ellington on the cover,
well, well, yeah, next to, but also behind.
slightly behind. Yes, technically slightly behind. Also, I think this photo also speaks this idea of Duke is focused, Billy is diffused.
uh-huh.
You can see
Yeah,
Duke is
but
staring down the lens of the camera. Billy is off to the side. He's looking down. He's looking a little bit more romantic.
romantic or deferential.
Either or. Maybe both.
Yeah,
Why not
yeah, yeah,
both?
yeah. Why not both?
So Strayhorn had this idea to do a jazz reinterpretation of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker. And with Duke
uh-huh.
by his side, they managed to sell this idea to Columbia Records in 1960. Despite the fact that the previous attempts of jazzing up the classics had been commercial failures. Like, Columbia Records were not excited. They were not
Mhm.
interested. It took time and effort to convince them that, hey, no, we are going to make this work. We got this. Like, you have the classical background that Strayhorn brought to the table. You have Duke's understanding of swing and jazz. Together, they were this incredible powerhouse that made a commercially successful version of the Nutcracker. And that is the promo video for the Nutcracker Suite, featuring one of my favorite musicians in the world, Paul Gonsalves.
Now, like the people's people. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Columbia Records presents Playback. Your guest, Duke Ellington. Your host, Goddard Lieberson.
And don't go away too far. Hi, got it.
This album ended up being one of the first times that, I think after Anatomy of a Murder, Strayhorn was kind of sick of this shit. He was really done with it. He had tried moving away from working with Ellington and flying on his own, but every single time Ellington kind of put a stop to that. The only collaborator he had outside of Ellington in a long-term collaboration process was Lena Horne, who Ellington had arranged that friendship. So I think by this point, project by project basis, they were splitting the credit, splitting the pay, and it was a lot more equal in their relationship. So in the later half of their career, you're seeing more stuff like this where Strayhorn is really standing up for himself and saying, this was my idea. My name needs to be on the record. This is my idea. And so we're getting some confidence. We're getting Strayhorn standing up for himself. And he's being like, yo, my photo should be on this thing. I should be credited, which I'm very, very happy with.
You go, Billy. Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. Yes.
Unfortunately now, we've reached the 1960s. In 1964, Strayhorn was diagnosed with esophageal cancer.
Yeah.
No one is surprised by this based on how much the man smoked and drank. He was in the middle of writing a 3-part composition called Blue Cloud for Ellington when he was hospitalized in 1967 due to his cancer. And he finished that composition, but now it changed its name, and it was called Blood Count.
Ouch.
And
That was a pretty radical shift.
yeah,
Blue Cloud to Blood Count.
yes.
Whoa.
On this track, you can hear Johnny Hodges playing the alto sax with more passion than I've ever heard from Johnny Hodges.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This is the last composition that Billy Strayhorn wrote before he passed. It is said that he was inspired by the sounds of the hospital, his IV bag dripping, and the sounds that surrounded him while he was lying in hospital, because he wrote this literally in the hospital on deathbed.
Whoa.
He had it sent from the hospital to Ellington. His partner at the time, Bill Grove, who was a white man, they did not give a single fuck about whether or not their relationship was deemed as legitimate by the hospital. And Bill Grove just never left his hide and was there for the entire time Billy Strayhorn was in the hospital. And Billy died in his arms at the tender age of 51 in May of 1967. Duke Ellington didn't go to the funeral. He couldn't bring himself to leave his bed. He was so devastated. He
Right.
couldn't go to the funeral.
Right.
Instead, in his own way, he had an entire album which he tributed to his relationship with Billy Strayhorn. The album is called And His Mother Called Him Bill. It won the Grammy for the Best Large Jazz Ensemble Album in 1968. It was recorded about 3 months after Strayhorn's passing, when Duke Ellington was finally able to get himself out of bed. As the band were packing up to leave the session, Ellington couldn't leave. He stayed at the piano and started playing a Strayhorn song called Lotus Blossom. This is one of those songs that Strayhorn had written that befuddled Ellington. Throughout their entire career together, Ellington did not know how. How did Billy come up with this track? It was so beautiful, so touching. And it was the one that kind of like stuck in Ellington. And so at the end of this recording session, Ellington's still at the piano. He starts playing this song that Strayhorn wrote for him as a solo. You can just about hear the chatter in the background as the rest of the band members packed up at the end of the recording session.
That's beautiful. Again, very classical, not very jazzy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would like you to read this quote. It's from Mr. Ellington about Strayhorn. He wrote it in 1973, so it's him looking back on his time.
He was not, as he was often referred to by many, my alter ego. Billy Strayhorn was my right arm, my left arm, all the eyes in the back of my head, my brain waves in his head, and his in mine. Wow.
They had a really deeply complicated relationship. But I think there was a sense of true love there between those men. And there
Yep.
was collaboration, there was frustration, there was jealousy, there was things tied up in show business and money. But at the end of the day, they created some of the most beautiful music in the world together. And I wish Mr. Strayhorn had lived longer and had been able to create more on his own. But I am so deeply grateful for the music that he has shared with us today.
Yes.
And this is just a snippet of what he's done. Other Strayhorn and Ellington collaborations that I really love, like my favorite song that they put together is called Such Sweet Thunder. And it's one of my absolute favorite swing jazz songs. And it was a collaboration between the two of them.
Things came out of them working together that could not have happened, that would not have come out of each of them working separately.
Yeah.
I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So that's Billy Strayhorn. I will say that a
Wow.
lot of his narrative, his story, is tied up in his relationship with Ellington and
Mhm.
their conflict, their collaboration, their joy. There's no way to tell that story of Billy without telling the story of Ellington at the same time.
Yeah.
But I'm so deeply grateful for them. And I'm so in love with the music they have created. And I also feel for Billy in like a really deep way. Like the fact that he loved cooking for people, the fact that he loved collaborating and creating, even if it wasn't for financial gain, like he just wanted to make music. I also am terrible at this. I just love creating art. Like I love creating dancing. I love creating costumes. I love creating drag. And like if people didn't pay me, I'd still do it. I'm really lucky there's no Duke Ellington character using my talents because I would do it. I feel that I have
Yeah.
no business acumen whatsoever. Um, and so I really feel for Billy. Living as a gay man in the 1940s was really difficult, but he found so much love in his life. And he found so many people he could collaborate with and work with who truly, truly loved him and appreciated his work. And that is just so beautiful to me.
I can absolutely see that. What a great life and what a great, you know, contribution to leave the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what do you think of Billy Strayhorn? What enthused you about Mr. Strayhorn's life?
I just loved the idea of this man. Here's the thing. I had never heard of him until I had, but I hadn't, like you
Yeah.
pointed out, right?
Yeah.
And yet it turns out that he is behind a lot of the music that I really, really enjoy. And I wonder how many other amazing people
Mm-hmm.
exist that I have not heard about that
Yeah.
have created stuff that I enjoy. I think we're slowly working our way towards a more equitable and fair world where
Yes.
it is easier for people who are not white and straight and male
Yeah.
to get recognition for the work they do. And I think that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. But also the way he lived his life, I think there's something there to learn from it for us enthusiasts. In
Yeah.
that there are these two sides creating this amazing music that goes out and then creating this amazing home life that
Yeah.
goes in. I thought that was beautiful. Yeah, the art of being a good host is vastly undervalued.
Yes. And creating a space for people like you to be able to be themselves is beautiful.
Yes, I can absolutely appreciate that. So, Katie, that was a deep dive into Billy Strayhorn. I want more. Where should I go?
If you would like an even deeper dive, there's actually a documentary available on YouTube from PBS's Independent Lens called Billy Strayhorn Lush Life. I will put that link
Ooh.
in the doobly-doo. It is a fascinating documentary. It goes into so much more detail on pretty much everything I talked about today and more, and talks to people who knew Billy personally and knew his life very well. And so I highly recommend that documentary. It's lovely. There is also an amazing book also called Lush Life. You can tell Lush Life was his most famous piece of music. It's a biography of Billy Strayhorn by David Hadju, and it's a really wonderful look at his life with a lot of empathy. Like, what I liked about reading it is that there's a lot more feeling in it and there's a lot more correcting of the record, like making sure he gets credit where credit is due. A lot of the stuff that I know about Billy Strayhorn's home life and his relationship with Aaron Bridgers comes from this book and from direct quotes from Aaron Bridgers, which is really lovely. I highly recommend that book. It is on archive.org. If you make an account, you can read it for free. You don't have to pay money.
Hey,
It's an online library. Um,
hey.
and of course, I will put YouTube links to all of the songs that we had in our session today, all 9 songs, so that you can hear them in full or hear them in your own time. I might also pop a couple of extra songs that I really like that come from this collaboration between Ellington and Strayhorn because I can.
Katie just got a really guilty look on her face when she said that. Like, more links,
How
yeah.
many more songs can I subject a person to? So, my dear listener, what did you think about Mr. Strayhorn? Do you have any questions, or did we leave out something awesome about him? Go to our website or our Instagram to leave a comment at Electric Enthusiasm. I really want to give him a hug. Is there a way for me to travel back in time just to give this man a hug? I probably wouldn't enjoy it because he definitely smelled like cigarette smoke, but also feel like I just want to give him a hug.
Yeah. I think you just did. In this moment of meta, I want to talk about how you connect with other people. So, Katie, let's say you're at a dinner party
Mm-hmm.
and you're sitting next to people you haven't really talked to before. You don't really know these people very well. What's the most common conversation opener people use?
What does you do for a living, which I hate.
Yes. What's wrong with that?
I just don't care. I just don't. Unless you have a very interesting job, which most people don't, I honestly don't care about your job. I want to know about anything else about you.
Yes, I feel the same way, and also it's also very status oriented, right?
Yeah.
Asking somebody about their job is also implicitly asking about their position in the status hierarchy, societal hierarchy.
Yeah.
So, today's moment of meta, I want to give people a tip. Instead of doing that, don't do that.
Please never do that. No one should ever do that ever
Eh,
again.
No, but a great way to connect with people is through their enthusiasm. So a question
Mhm.
like, "Hey, nice to meet you. What are you enthusiastic about these days?" It will stump people at first because not a lot of people ask this. But then they get to talk about something they're actually excited about. Now, they might be
Yes.
excited about their job and they might mention their job, but now we're on a completely different footing because now it's something they actually care deeply about. I've opened with this question a million times, and I've heard about people's dogs, like specific dog breeds.
Y
I've heard about people's hobbies. I heard about the latest book they're reading, movies they saw, music they listen to, their kids. But whatever it is, doesn't really matter what it is because now it's something they are enthusiastic about. So that is so much better of a
Yeah.
conversation openers than hey, so what do you do? Have you tried this, Katie?
Yes, just because I really don't care about people's jobs. Like, I really don't care. Um, I've made friends with people here, and then I come home and I'm like, "Oh, I met this person today." And then my mom will be like, "Oh, what do they do?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a great question. I have absolutely no idea." Um,
Yeah.
Something with a computer, probably, I guess. I think they work with a computer. I think they have an office that they might go to potentially, maybe like Um, but yeah, I just find talking about work so deeply boring that I'll just be like, I won't necessarily say, "What are you enthusiastic about these days?" But I will
Mhm.
never ask the question, "What do you do for a living?" I'll just like, "So what's up? What's going on in your life? Tell me about you." Um,
Yeah.
I have no idea what you do for a living, and I honestly couldn't care less. I'm much more interested in who you are as a person than how you engage in capitalism. Thank you. Good night.
Yes. And that's the cool thing about asking people what they're enthusiastic about or excited about or
Yeah.
really into these days. Because, first of all, whatever it is, it'll be something positive.
Mhm.
And I think you get to know people better
Yeah.
when you talk about what they like than what they hate. A lot of people hate their jobs, doesn't really tell me about you, right?
Yeah,
But if you tell
no.
me you're really into drag or you're really into,
Exactly.
I had a long conversation with somebody who was into body modification.
Okay.
Yeah, like scarring. That person had at one point been hung from meat hooks.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. So it might be weird. It might take you places you don't expect to go, but it will at the very least be interesting. And you will connect with who this person really is because you're connecting
Yeah,
with something they are positive about, which I think is a much better way to get to know people.
I agree. I
Um,
like this.
yeah, yes, and the exact phrasing, so what are you enthusiastic about these days? What are you excited about? What are you into? What are you passionate about? Doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. But try to connect to people, and you will find you get excitement, you get passion, and I think that's phenomenal. And then that's your chance as a fellow enthusiast to
Mhm.
ask some really cool questions
Yes.
like, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing. How did you get into that?" Or "What do you really enjoy about it?" Or "What's so cool about this?" Or, "If I wanted to try this, how could I get into this?" And you can
Totally.
have an actual fun, enthusiastic, high energy conversation.
I feel like this is also the driving force behind this podcast is that it's fun. It's so much more fun and exciting and entertaining to hear someone talk about something they're excited about. Like that's the
Yes.
whole reason we have guests. It's the whole reason we hang out together every week. Whole reason, hopefully, why you're listening, because it's so much more interesting. You could make this podcast come to life in your own universes, in your own reality, just by asking people about their enthusiasms. Like, if you like this podcast, make it yourself in real life with your friends.
Exactly. Exactly. Make your own episode. Record it. Send it to us. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Don't do
Yes!
that.
Oh, I wanna hear it.
But in any case, you will get a much better connection with people. You'll have a lot more fun, and you will give that other person you've just met a chance to shine and talk about something they're really into.
Mhm. I 100% agree with this. I like this.
Fantastic. So that was this week's Moment of Meta.
It was short and sweet. I like it.
Short and sweet. So, Katie, if somebody really liked this episode, what other episode of ours do you think they'd also enjoy?
I'm thinking any of the music episodes. I'm thinking specifically the Jonathan Stout one. Because Jonathan Stout is a jazz musician, and he talks a lot about another musician from back in the 30s called Charlie Christian, and I think that'll have a nice tie-in with Billy Strayhorn's life. What about you? What would you recommend?
I would send people back to our episode from last week on Pete Hine, who was also a multi-talented genius, but personality-wise, the complete opposite of Billy Strayhorn. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the contrast between how those two approach their work, their art, their genius, I think is
Yeah.
really, really interesting. They both left behind a huge legacy of works of art, but the way they live their lives could not be more different. Where Billy Strayhorn may have had a lush life. Oh yeah, you saw what I did there, right?
I saw what you did.
I think Pete Hine had the opposite.
Mm.
He still created great work, but was not a happy soul.
Mm. What a shame. Let's all
Yep.
aspire to have happier souls.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed sharing some of our enthusiasms in this episode. Please visit our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or find us on Instagram at Electric Enthusiasm to discover more episodes or to tell me about how amazing Billy Strayhorn is, because really I just want to hear everyone sing his praises from now on. He is the most unsung hero of the jazz industry, and I want more people to be singing his praises. This is my agenda here. I just want more people to know about Billy Strayhorn and love him the way I do, because he has been uncredited for too long, but no more.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, that was great. That makes perfect sense. And now, dear listener, go live a lush life.
Yeah.